Show. My name is Jack McLean. I'm your host, and today my guest is our newly appointed strength and conditioning coach, James Wolfenden. He's also the head strength and conditioning coach at the Carlton VFL Men's. Before we start this episode, our mission here at Prepare Like a Pro is to inspire aspiring athletes and staff with practical knowledge from some of the industry's most inspiring individuals and to strengthen the AFL community. If you like the show, please show your support by following us on Instagram and subscribing to the podcast. We're on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. Welcome, James Wolfman. How you going?
I'm all right, mate. How are you?
I'm going well.
I've made it. I've made it on the podcast. I'm a big deal now. I'm a big deal.
Not sure about that, but hopefully one day, mate. Hopefully the podcast will grant you that. But take us through the very beginning, mate. Firstly, what age did you discover you had a passion for strength and conditioning?
Oh, look, I think generally the gym in high school, because when you go to the gym and start lifting weights, curls for the girls, all that, you're not really thinking about strength and conditioning. You're just thinking, big steps. But through high school, sort of started finding myself in the gym every lunch break after school, that kind of thing. Then pretty soon I realized, once, leaving school, didn't really care for a job where I was sitting down a lot. Mm-hmm. Wasn't interested in all the other kind of things that my friends were going to uni for. And I knew I want to be involved in sport. And at the time I was coaching basketball in Sydney. So I would have been coaching basketball since probably I was 18, right after I was left school, straight into coaching basketball. Then was, for about 5 years after school, I was doing a sports coaching degree there, coaching basketball. And I sort of started moving more and more into S&C stuff, looking at the gym side of things. Then I started looking at how I can apply S&C principles that can actually aid in teaching people basketball. Let that crossover happen. Then I realized, if I actually want to, go down this kind of a road, I need to look into sports science stuff. Then same time, it was sort of a combination of, I haven't really traveled and I haven't moved out of home yet. So I sort of decided I'll go halfway between the two kind of and move to Melbourne. Basketball's better down here anyway. So that's sort of part of the reason why I moved. Came here, and then anyone that has had to move to Melbourne will obviously tell you that you need to figure out footy pretty quick if you want to have a social life. And if you want to understand anything of what anyone's telling you. So started picking up a little bits and pieces, figuring out what teams do I need to hate, who do I need to love, blah, 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 blah. Studying at RMIT, doing Bachelor of Exercise Sports Science, then got into football when I started interning over at Essendon. Dabbled a little bit on the AFL side, but mostly VFL there, which was pretty interesting when you don't know that much about football, and especially don't know the names of these incredibly high-profile players, and you sort of have a few awkward moments when you have no idea who their name is and they're some superstar player. Yeah. But then, you learn stuff pretty quick when you're thrown in the deep end. Then go through there a bit of time with the VFL over at Essendon. Then moved over to Carlton after COVID. Moved over there and been there since, and sort of playing around with various other bits and pieces around sports science and coaching at different gyms and so on and so forth.
Yep. Yeah, you mentioned early days that the passion to get into the gym and develop yourself physically, and then getting in, you had a passion for coaching more the technical side, and then you started to bridge the gap. With that, how did that come about, where athletes starting to ask about how they can improve their athleticism, and that's where you started to gravitate towards helping them in the gym? Talk us
Not
through
really.
that process.
I was asking that of myself. So I'm someone that I'm always thinking, okay, what's the next thing? What can I get better at this? What's an angle for this that can improve that? trying to find different ways to attack a problem, as opposed to, like, whenever you're coaching any kind of skill, whether it's tactical, technical, in the gym, whatever, there are some people that are gonna react, they're gonna respond really quickly to what you're saying, and then some people aren't. And it's just finding different ways to communicate things. And so as a young coach, you don't have a lot of those tools. But I'm thinking to myself, and what I started realizing later on is that I'm actually kind of playing around with sort of constraints-based approaches to learning. And I'm thinking, all right, how do I teach people this technique without telling them to do this technique? Because I've told them to do this technique and it hasn't worked.
Yeah.
So how do I play around with something where I can put them into this position so they can feel it without me trying to puppeteer them with words? And that sort of led towards, okay, we'll get some resistance bands out. Oh, okay, maybe if I can reinforce this position with some resistance training, I can sort of remove the basketball component of it, and I can simplify this movement, which is a lot of the time what you're doing in the gym anyway.
Yeah.
And that can help reinforce the motor skill of it. And then, you know, looking back at that now, again, that's a lot of what people talk about now in that constraints-based approach, being able to adjust some kind of motor skill, add a resistance to it to reinforce it mentally. And that's where I didn't sort of stop and think to myself and research constraints-based approach. That's just the line of thinking I went down.
Yeah, it was effective at the time. And do you think for S&Cs listening in, spending some time early on for your coaching and communication side of things, managing a group for, you know, junior sports is helpful?
Absolutely. Like, straight up, if you're not coaching something, like, it doesn't need to be, you know, high level S&C. You're not going to walk into the best clubs in the world and be an S&C just because you ask. But if you can, like, I started coaching basketball at a local club in Sydney, and I was assisting at a representative level, like 18, 19. Like, it's not like, you're not going to waltz into high level stuff, but if you can manage a group of people, deliver information in a way that actually is effective and changes behavior, like, that's the essence of any kind of coaching. And if you can't do that, then I don't care if you call yourself an S&C coach, a technical coach, whatever coach, like, you're not going to be as effective as you can be. And so I think what I've found a lot of the time going through uni and with a lot of younger coaches is that they all start focusing on, you know, what are my sets and rep schemes? What's, you know, my this, that, or whatever technical pieces. And it's like, bruh, like, can you deliver this? Like, what, I don't care what your idea is, can you deliver it to a group of 10, 20, 30 people that really don't care what you have to say? Like, straight up, you get in front of a group of 10 people, especially if they're like 14, 15, 16-year-olds, they just want a ball.
Yeah.
They just want to play. Like,
dunk.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they want to shoot threes, dunk. And if you can help them dunk, sick, they'll listen to you, man. They will listen to you. If you can help them get better at the thing they love doing, sick. But if you're trying to convince them, all right, we need to get down, stay in this defensive stance. And no one likes to be in a defensive stance. No one wants to actually apply that kind of effort, because it's not, you know, that's not fun. But if you can develop the skills to communicate the importance of that and then get them to buy into your message, I don't care what level you're at, what context you're in, that's going to translate in terms of when you get to, if you're an S&C coach and you want to deliver a program to people, if you have those skills from early on, like, I'm talking before you start going to uni, or even first year of uni, if you're coaching your local football team, even if you just want to, you know, you're good at kicking and you want to be their kicking coach, teach people stuff. Hell, if you're at uni, be the smart dude that teaches other people. Like, that just teach people stuff, because at the end of the day, you're a coach, you're a teacher. That's what you are.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, mate. Like you said at the start, like, whether you're technical, tactical, or you're in the gym, you're essentially teaching athletes how to move, either at a slow pace, fast pace, in a complex nature like sport, or a controlled manner like a one-on-one setting in the gym. And it must, in hindsight, it's probably now with, like you mentioned, you know, with Franz Bosch methodology sort of being a big wave through the industry, and constraints-based coaching, and starting to appreciate motor learning you must be pretty pleased with how, you sort of landing your feet with that gravitation towards basketball first, and then brought in the technicalities and laid those sort of your periodization and your sort of strength and conditioning models later on in your career.
Yeah, well, it's handy because, I played basketball and rugby through school. Again, Sydney boy, I constantly want to play rugby. So, you rock up in Melbourne and you realize that footy is a pretty solid combination of those two plus a couple other things. So it's sort of, if you understand a few of those fundamental elements, and then how to coach them, it really helps, especially going into a sport that I wasn't that familiar with when I started, interning at places. If you can't communicate those elements of stuff that you're already familiar with, you've got no chance with stuff that you're not familiar with. But it also helps if, for example, you are finding yourself in a sport that you aren't as familiar with originally. If you can relate certain things to this new sport that you already have experience with, so in my case, basketball and rugby, then you really, it's going to help bridge the gap. And what I tend to find is that those newer perspectives, even newer, in a group like, especially like football, can be quite useful, because it's just like, if you hear the same message over and over and over again, then you ignore it. But if it's said slightly differently from a basketball perspective, so then like, oh, okay, I understand that. And someone else who has been in their ear about something that you explained in a different way and it worked, that other coach is going to get annoyed at you because you said the perfect words, but that's on them. That's fine. It also helps with basketball because so many football players have an experience in basketball as well.
Yeah, there's a successful crossover. And with the understanding that technical side, like from a conditioning point of view, what are some helpful drills that, like, specifically that you've helped with, like, players that want to improve their footwork, I guess, on the field, or maybe their repeatability in terms of repeat high intensity efforts? Like, what are some classic sort of football drills that you've seen over the last couple of years now working in footy, but then you've added in maybe a more basketball type drill to it, or a rugby element to it?
So in terms of conditioning stuff, what I like to do, and this is less a matter of like taken from basketball or rugby or anything. It's more a matter of, because I'll have to work a lot of the times with a football coach. And I know as myself, as someone who's been a head coach, you've got a bit of an ego about you, and, you want to, this is the way we want to do stuff. So I think for me, I've found it's less a matter of how do I create some sort of conditioning thing. And it's more a matter of, okay, how do I work with this coach? They've got their drill that they want to do. And a lot of the time, it might be like an in-tight drill, like a sort of a touch drill, a quite in-close, which really is just sort of contextual agility, which there's no point in me trying to create something brand new when we've got some sort of in-tight drill that they're already doing that's going to tick all the boxes that I need ticked. And if they've got that drill, I'm like, okay, sick. That's our agility stuff. But then if I need to obviously turn it into a conditioning thing, I might then go over to that coach and be like, all right, cool. Let's change the timings of this. I'm then thinking intensity and duration, right? I'm thinking, all right, let's have like a 20-second hard effort. Yep. And now I'm bringing in some fitness lingo, some S&C lingo. Let's do a 1-to-1 work rest ratio, 1-to-2, blah, 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 all that. Start bringing in those concepts, and you can just talk to that coach, like, hey, let's, can we turn this into a conditioning block? Let's say we run this for one thing, and you coach stuff, great. And then we just increase the intensity of it. We change around the work rest ratio of stuff. So I haven't really needed to, inject myself that much, which again, if you're an S&C coach injecting yourself onto the football domain, be careful, because there can be plenty of times where a football coach is like, no, just get the hell out of my way. I don't need you. I need to coach. And any time you can basically tell a football coach, hey, I'm going to maximize your time teaching stuff. I'm going to maximize your time for drills. All I ask is we change around some timings and stuff. If you can do that, if that ticks your boxes as an S&C high performance, whatever, sick, love it. And if at the same time, you've still got them getting coaching minutes in, sick, everyone wins.
Yeah, it's a win-win.
And then if you need to work on some isolated footwork stuff, some change of direction stuff as opposed to agility, and you can go down that whole rabbit hole of difference between change of direction and agility. You can then just do, I tend to, for footwork stuff, I'll just tend to go into like an agility ladder. Like, again, there's a whole kind of thing around people with hate agility ladders because they think that you're not going to get that much more agile and fast, which is true. You're not really going to get, faster using an agility ladder. But if you're an absolute baby and don't know where your feet are at any point in time, then jumping on a ladder just to help get you some coordination with your feet, sick. I've used agility ladders to teach footwork for basketball, which is obviously in basketball, it's a massive thing for work, but you can just teach footwork and then you can start applying a bit more force to that. And then at a certain point, if you've got good footwork and you're applying more force, then you kind of need to get rid of that agility ladder because you've sort of used it all up essentially.
Yeah.
But really it's trying to find ways to keep their agility work and their conditioning work as close to what they're doing in training as possible, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
There'll obviously be times where you just need to do some proper plain old conditioning stuff. But if you can maximize the time that a coach has with their athlete, sick, love it. If you can get the things that you want by just changing around, durations and work rest ratios and whatever, sick, love it, everyone wins.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes a lot of sense, mate. And it's an important thing for S&Cs to recognise that it's, not to work in silos, but actually to collaborate, communicate with your staff members. And like you said, everyone can win if there's strong communication about what are you looking forward to achieve with the players from a conditioning point of view, and what are the coaches and how can you marry them up. Athletes are going to win there as well because it's more specific and more enjoyable.
And I think I wouldn't have gotten as much of an appreciation for that fact if I hadn't worked as a coach, like as a technical and tactical coach, because I'd think to myself, I'm the expert, I know S&C stuff, blah, 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 blah. Just listen to me, man. And I'm just like, well, no, they have absolutely no direct reason to listen to you unless you give them one. They've got a job to do. If this team wins or loses, a lot of the time that's going to be purely based on the decisions of that head coach. So that head coach has to trust what you say and has to understand that no one's winning premierships in the weight room, but you can sure lose them by not being out in the field. So you've got to make sure, like you've got to have an appreciation for that. You have to appreciate that coach has a lot of different aspects of that team, that individual that they need to be looking out for, and that you need to make sure that you are helping that head coach achieve what they need to achieve, and you're helping those players achieve what they need to achieve on a broader level. If you don't really have that understanding as an S&T sports scientist, you need to get out into the real world a little bit, coach some sports to understand what the demands of that head coach or just general like technical and tactical sport coaches have to deal with.
Yep. And you mentioned first working at Essendon Football Club, both across the AFL men's and VFL in assistant sort of internship role. Talk us through how that would sort of look, both from a athlete development point of view. What were some things that you sort of learnt straight away that are valuable for footballers, but also from a career point of view in terms of progression and recognizing potentially it's elite sport is something you're passionate about?
So I'll start with the AFL side because that was I spent a handful of days working around them. Yep. It was, for me, it was mostly get in, learn the toys, learn the the GPS stuff, learn some of the gym aware stuff, some of the power testing, getting around it, seeing the flow of the day essentially, heading out on the track and really seeing how players relate to the S&C sports science side. And it's really like, again, you're coming into that environment as a sports nerd, so don't expect the cool kids to like all your toys. They're going to come in and see all the GPS stuff, and what do they care about? Hey, did I beat this person in meters and so on? Like, it's a competition. It, like, again, we don't like, it's understanding what your impact has on these people and what they care about. which it's not a bad thing that they don't care about the same things that you care about, because if they did, then we'd be overthinking this entire industry.
Yeah.
So I think it's sort of that you quickly learn that you need to sort of check yourself and remember that you need to relate this stuff to what they want.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what information you're collecting, no matter what objectives you have, if they don't care about them, good luck, buddy. Like, and again, it's just being relatable. So just remembering that these people are humans who are here. Again, let's start. Like, let's remember that this is, at the end of the day, a ball sport that we all, people played as kids, and that's all sport is. It's a bunch of kids playing sport for a lot of serious money, but at the end of the day, everyone's doing it for enjoyment. People want to be here for football. They're not here to get bigger in the gym as much as you want them to be. They're not here to, blow up the GPS as much as you want them to. So you've got to find a way really to communicate that information to them. And that's sort of what I sort of found, starting with the AFL side of things, that they'll come through, they'll do the stuff you ask them to do, but if you want them to do it like with a certain amount of vigor and energy that you want them to, then you've got to give them a reason.
Yeah.
Then going into the VFL side of it. So I promised him that I give him a lot of shout outs to annoy him. So Cam Micallef or McAuliffe, however you want to annoy him. If there's a name that you need to go search up, because he is probably one of the best men working in football. That's where I met him, over at Essendon VFL. He's one of those people that if you ever meet him, and plenty of people have, they'll agree with me that he is one of the nicest people you're going to meet. And immediately you see in how he relates to players. And so that was one of the big things I learned at VFL level, is that if you show just care, like if you're someone who rolls in and just sees these players as people that, mechanisms that you need to get better in order to add to the whole that is football team, then you kind of lost the secret sauce. And that's probably the first thing I learned in being around Kama, is a level of care for individuals and really just love and appreciation for everyone that's working with him, that makes people want to do the stuff that, that you're asking of them. And that's not because you need to care about these people in order to achieve your goals. It's because, why the hell are we rocking up to do this job for people to be doing this sport if you don't enjoy it? And if you're not contributing to an environment that increases the joy of people there, what are you doing? Like, especially at a VFL level, like, we're not here for the money. So like, if you're going to be there, you better damn well be enjoying yourself. And big thing from him is that if you rock up, he walks in the door, everyone has a smile on their face. And so that's probably the biggest thing I learned at that point in VFL, is that you need to create a positive atmosphere with everything that you do. Besides, like, again, put aside all the sports science jargon, put aside your objectives and your agenda for increasing performance, and just increase the amount of smiles in a room, increase the amount of high fives in a room, increase the hugs in a room, the love yous, appreciate yous, and all that. Like that's probably the most important element in any kind of, honestly, team. And that's sort of what I got out of my VFL experience there.
Yeah, and it's a good one to refer back on for those listening in. Like you said, straight away, as soon as you start studying sports science, put it to practice and apply your learnings with people to develop those, softer skills, if you call them that, or the art of coaching, but communication side of things. What about from the technical side of things? Was there anything in there? You mentioned how you were exposed to GPS, where there's some situations that you're either put in, or just by working with strength and conditioning coaches, sports scientists, physiotherapists that have been in the game for a while. Was there anything in there where you thought, it would have been helpful if I did a bit more of this, to make an impact in this environment before getting that opportunity? Or whether it be track and field experience, Olympic weightlifting, whatever specific sort of technical skills?
I wouldn't say that there's any particular set of skills that you needed going. I think a good attitude, like understanding that you don't know everything, because the people that do rock up and they think they know everything, like, you know, that outside of sport, those people piss you off, and in sport, they definitely piss you off. Yeah. But in terms of learnings before I got there, really, like, I just, look, I'm pretty good academically. So like I had the understanding of, you know, all the baseline university stuff of all the technical side of things. And that's useful to have. Absolutely. Don't come in as a total idiot. In terms of other skills, what I found with my experience there, and I really appreciate it, of the people there, the people that brought me in. So Kama being one of them, Cody Moran, who was there at the time, was a sports scientist for Essendon AFL there. Justin Crowe as well was the HPM at the time. When I came in, they were big sports nerds. And so in my interview to get in, like, I just started getting them to, you know, gush like sports nerds, which, big tip, if you're in an interview, get people talking like nerds, and they probably appreciate having you around, because they probably don't have too many people to talk to like that. But really, I think that good teams and managers and stuff will find, if you're a good person, they'll find a way to utilize the skills you have. Yeah. Having said that, come with something, like come with some kind of experience, like you've coached some people before. If you come in and you are an Olympic lifting coach, sick. Like, have something that sets you apart. It doesn't mean that you have to like roll in. Like, I know for in terms of interns that come to us now, I'm not expecting them to be Olympic lifting coaches. I'm not expecting them to be, you know, the best S&C coaches in the world. I'd probably get, you know, my ego couldn't take that. But have something that sets you apart.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay, cool. I don't do that. Like, if you're super good at, you know, like Franz Bosch stuff, I'm not super into that. Like, talk to me, teach me stuff. Like, I'm keen to learn. Like, if you can set yourself apart in whatever skill, love it. We had one of our interns at Carlton last year was a gymnastics coach. And so we were like, sick, I've got no idea about gymnastics. Love it. Talk to me about it. And then we even had, you know, during a warm-up, he ran some, it's like a handstand progression, basically. Just to something like, you know, spice things up. Let's do something a bit different. Let's have a little bit of fun. We got him using some of the trampoline stuff that we've got at Carlton for some plyo prep stuff. Hey, he's got a cool skill. Let's try and utilize it. But then in terms of learning stuff at Essendon, just be a sponge. Like, I don't think anyone expects you to roll in understanding how to utilize GPS for a team. Just be a sponge and ask questions. Ask all the questions in the world. If they get sick of your questions, that probably says more about them than you.
Yeah.
Like,
also, Matt. Yeah. And what about on the flip side, mate? Challenges that you've faced over your career, and what have you learned? How have you grown from them?
So I'm a perfectionist, which is not a good thing. Don't say, oh yeah, okay, this guy's a perfectionist. Don't be a perfectionist. It's terrible. That's probably one of the biggest challenges that I've had, is that I'll have that paralysis by analysis. And honestly, there's no singular detail in physical performance that is going to have that big of an impact that you should lose sleep over it. Like, if you're stopping the rollout of an otherwise pretty good intervention because it's not perfect, then you're missing out on a lot. Like, let the chaos be there, which I know has been a big challenge for me as an individual. Other challenges would be, you know, learning football in those early phases. But that's always fun and to learn new stuff. Obviously, COVID's a challenge because, of course. But really, it's that applying your technical knowledge to a group of people that don't care about your technical knowledge, and finding, and again, as a teacher, coach, whatever, it's not the athlete's job to care about what you have to say. It's your job to get them to either care about what you have to say or deliver it in a way that they care about. Like, again, it's on you, which I think is a really, really good challenge, because they don't teach you that at school. No, that legit. No, I don't think there's any uni degree that they'll tell you about it. They'll tell you, oh, you know, the real world's a bit different, but it doesn't prepare you. But I think that's probably been some of the biggest challenges, other than the classic ones of. Actually, another big one is sort of networking. I'm not a good networker, so I've found that in a lot of this industry, you need to do that just to get to know people, not just to get to know people, to get advantages in your career and blah, blah. There's all that type of thing. But I think it opens you up to new ideas of stuff. Mm-hmm. I've found that the broader my network got, the more stuff I learned and then more ideas I got. Even working with you, you know, there's even just different ways of applying, because of your background in some CrossFit stuff as well. So it's like, okay, I don't know people that have had that background. You take bits and pieces, and it's just sort of a different way of, whether it's programming stuff, whether it's a little different way of teaching stuff. So it's like, okay, cool, take little bits and pieces. And so that's something that's been a challenge for me, but it's not a natural thing for me to do. But you look at people who it is a natural thing for, and you know, they have a lot of success come their way. Mm-hmm. And so it's one of those things, like, got to get better at it.
Yep. Yeah, thanks for sharing, mate. And for the athletes or parents of young athletes listening in, what are some common strength and conditioning, athlete development sort of mistakes that you see? And you're now working obviously privately with us, where you're seeing people on a one-on-one basis, but also, you know, you've got a fair sense by working into AFL programs of, you know, what's relevant, what's not. What are some things that you feel that young athletes that haven't been in the system or been in a talent pathway system potentially, you know, make mistakes with, or you know, need to focus more of their energy towards other things?
Well, other than the biggest one being not doing any S&C stuff, but other than that, I'd probably say majoring in the minor. And what I mean by that is really looking at whether it's in terms of trying to find exactly the right supplement, because I know, you know, we're all teenagers and we're all trying to find what's the best mix of supplement to make me massive when you're going to the gym like maybe once or twice a week. Or another way would be looking at like the cool, flashy, really high level exercise that you find on Instagram and not seeing the progressions of over, you know, 1, 2, 6, 12 months that it took to get there, not paying them any attention. That's what I'd probably say is probably one of the most common mistakes, is looking at the 1% things and thinking that that's what's separating me from the elite level. And it's like, no, it's probably a lot of the other stuff, which is perfectly fine, especially at that sort of junior age. If you haven't been to the gym, it's like, well, like, it's okay that you haven't been there, but like, let's get on that. It's, you know, let's get on some of this skill stuff. Let's start developing it. It's like, that's not a 1% thing. Like, put your energy into the big rocks, and that's going to give you bigger results than doing this one cool plyometric exercise, or getting the right supplement, or doing the exact right balance of different recovery mechanisms. Hit the big stuff and you're going to get most of the way there.
Yep. And it can be basketball as well. What's an athlete that you've observed that's really exceeded your expectations? You know, they've surprised you in the results they achieved, or the performances that they come to realize?
I don't really know. It's difficult to say exceeded expectations, because I expect a lot from people, and I expect people to put a lot of energy in, and I want them to put a lot of energy. So I feel like there's not a lot of people that exceed them, but I think there's some people that are sort of like caught me out of left field. It's sort of, it's a cool story that I really think back on when I was back, I think I was 18, 19, coaching, you know, it's like a local under 18s team, which was full of like below bottom age. These guys should have been playing under 16s. Got all the way to a grand final, lost in a grand final. It'd be like that sometimes. And towards the end of the season, one of our players who I was trying to get, he was a pretty good player. And I'm like, hey, man, like, I need you taking a bit of leadership and ownership of this team now. It can't just be me yelling at you guys. I need you to help me out here. And you sort of turn this sort of 15-year-old and sort of, starts puffing out his chest a bit and sort of telling people what to do. And I'm like, sick. Okay, that makes my job so much easier. No, I haven't, I'm still 18, 19. I haven't matured enough to realize that I've just actually done something to this kid. He's developed into something. And at that point, I'm just thinking, I've got another coach on this. This makes my life so much easier.
Yeah.
Towards the end of that season, that kid's dad says to me, hey, thanks for everything you've done this season. I think in no small part, thanks to you, my son can look me in the eye when he talks to me now. And I'm like, oh shit. And again, 18, 19-year-old me, and I'm just like, you're welcome. And then you sort of look back on that, you realize, oh wow, you actually like had quite a big impact on someone. And that's probably in terms of, I don't know if you call it exceeding expectations, because I've never had an expectation that was entirely out of left field. But then it sort of makes you stop and think, okay, you're not coaching S&C, you're not coaching basketball, you're not coaching football, you're coaching people.
Yeah.
And even if that person doesn't go on to get drafted to the NBA, to the AFL, whatever, like you've helped a kid walk taller, and good.
Yeah, that's awesome, mate. Thanks for the insight, and we love storytelling. So appreciate you sharing that one. Moving into the personal side, mate, give us a bit of an insight into how Wolf operates. Are you a quote man? Do you have a favorite inspirational motto or quote?
I'm not a big quote guy, but in general, I feel like, hopefully I've got a sort of a motto, I guess, would be enjoy what you do. It goes back to what I was saying about Cam before. Everyone listening, go harass him, go annoy him, go ask him questions, go just to piss him off. I love you, Cam. And really just enjoy what you do. And I'll put it to you another way, another bit of storytelling, because I've recently learned that is one of the big tools that I need to get better at in terms of my coaching, is getting to, using more stories. One of the quotes, or a lot of times football clubs will have their mottos and quotes and some mantras and stuff. At Essendon VFL, we literally had so placard was, someone was compete on one big thing. There was a picture of, a shot from a game of people competing. One of them was literally Cam it, as in Cam, McCall Cam it. And it just meant care and love for each other and enjoying what you do and helping other people enjoy what they're doing there. If you could put Cam it as a life motto or an inspirational quote, go for it. And just meaning like enjoy what you do, help other people enjoy being around you and so on. Just because, you hear stuff, quotes like, discipline's what saves you when motivation fails, that kind of thing. It's like, yeah, cool. But if you don't enjoy what you're doing, why are you doing it? And if you don't enjoy what you're doing, but you need to do it, find a way to enjoy it, whether it's, find a different method to do that thing which you enjoy. It might be do that thing you don't really enjoy, but have someone with you that you enjoy having the company. Just enjoy what you do, because otherwise, what are you doing it for? Yeah,
it's a good one. And what about some books or documentaries for athletes, or even for strength and conditioning coaches?
I'm not a massive book reader. I have picked up a couple though. One for Coaches That Say It's Conscious Coaching by Brett Bartholomew, which I'd be surprised if a handful of coaches on this podcast haven't mentioned before. And that's just sort of helped me with tailoring a communication style to different people. Because again, like I said before, it's not a player's job to be coached by you. It's your job to coach them and find a way to coach them. Which I think that book has some tips about how to deal with different personality types and so on. But I reckon one for anyone is probably Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. So I'll let people do most of their own research about Jocko Willink, but essentially he's a ex-Navy SEAL, talks about the idea of extreme ownership being taking responsibility for stuff, for everything. So it's anything that happens, you need to take responsibility for it some way, shape, or form. For example, if your teammate makes a mistake on field, instead of blaming that individual, you need to, okay, what could I have done to help prevent that mistake from happening?
Yep.
And if you ask those sort of questions of yourself, you'll find that you can actually have more of an impact on people around you than you might realize. And then on a team and so on and so forth. And it's just an interesting concept. I let people, read it or have a look at his stuff on YouTube or whatever they want to do. But it's an interesting concept in really having a look at what impact you can have on people, and then not sitting back and blaming everyone else for stuff, because that's going to get you and everyone else nowhere.
Yeah. And what about in your work life? Do you have pet peeves or anything that fires you up?
I hate apathy and people that don't want to get better. I hate it so much, because I'm constantly thinking of myself, okay, how can I make this better? Again, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, which is not a good thing. But I don't get it when people just are fine with things being okay. Like, okay, great, let's make it better. Let's find something we can do. If we've done the big rocks, we've hit our big rocks, great. How do we hit the big rocks better? What are some other things we can do now? Because I don't know, maybe it's just because I just don't like sitting still. There's probably something diagnosable in that, but it's those people that kind of like, if you want to come up with an idea or something and you want to try and do something new and exciting and stuff, and they're just like, oh, I don't want to, but we already do. And I'm like, help me out, get me excited to be here. Come on, let's go. That's probably one of my biggest pet peeves.
Yeah. Drainers. You want energizers?
Yeah, there we go.
What about favorite way to spend a day off, mate?
Movies, TV, games, sort of, I'm a big movie guy. And especially recently with this weather, geez. Or I'm just, at the gym. Finding, any other times to hang out with people, whatever, just chillaxing, really. I'm not someone who needs to plan out, a billion, because, I'm a bit of an introvert myself, which kind of runs contrary to my line of work. So I tend to have to relax a lot when I'm not working. I've got to, recharge the battery, so to say.
And for those parents listening in, or athletes, mate, that have you've inspired to, like you said, some aren't doing the big rocks and actually getting in the gym. Where do you do your work for us in Paran? What's the location of the gym, but also more importantly, what's a typical session? What can people expect to get better at when they train with yourself?
Well, and if people that have met me, they'll notice I'm a big dog for a reason. So in terms of what you can expect, well, firstly, I work out of Edge Training in Paran. But then in field sessions around Paran. And I'm talking about big rocks, it's one of the things I focus on, especially with junior athletes, is just being able to lift things well, learn the skill, and then be able to apply force. I'm big on that. One of my philosophies really in terms of most sports is speed kills, power thrills. And if you can apply force quick, then in a lot of situations, you're probably going to succeed. I'm more than happy to discuss that sort of philosophy, because there's a lot of things that you can go into with that. But in general, if you don't have a good baseline of strength and power, forget about performance, weak things break. So the number one goal of this job is to make sure people don't break. So let's make sure people are strong. That's a big thing for me, is finding ways to develop strength and power in a football specific way that can, that helps someone be robust enough to handle football. But also do it in a safe way, because obviously you can do some crazy stuff in a gym that isn't always safe stuff. So it's one of those things of learning how to move challenging that by, put a little bit of weight on. And then if once you understand you can move well and you're hungry for it, then we can start looking at some power.
Yeah. Well said, mate. There's more to it than obviously if you just said get strong. You mentioned context is key. So there's understanding how to build robustness to help you be resilient in football and increase your player availability, which is massive because obviously development's going to go through the roof the more sessions that you're healthy for. But also it's not a matter of just lifting more. It's actually applying force correctly in the right direction, everything. So love that holistic view, mate. And looking forward to working with you a bit more. What's on the horizon for 2022? For those listening to the recording, we're now doing this in late November. Who would have thought that the weather's this bad in Melbourne? I'm sure Sydney's a bit nicer.
Mate, apparently it's snowing in some parts of Victoria, I've heard.
There you go. That's no surprise. But yeah, for those listening in 2023, mate, talk us about the horizon of what next year is going to look like for you.
Big season for the Baggers. I think I have some success there. Real keen. We're already putting together some planning and stuff for pre-season to get after it. Real keen on that. We made finals last year for VFL. So we're real keen on pushing that further. Always stay hungry for that. That's probably, one of the big things I'm most excited about is just getting back into it. Always enjoy team success, individual successes. Myself individually, might even go back to uni, looking into that, looking more at sort of the rehab side of things, just to broaden that perspective now. Because I find that the more you can, again, looking at a holistic perspective of stuff, the more you can appreciate when the body's healthy and then when it's not, the better. But yeah, hopefully we can have a good season for the whole club over at the Blues, get the big boys over the line. None of those 1 point downings to Collingwood. Anywho, I didn't bring it up, you did. And hopefully it's a lot of success across the whole club.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for jumping on, mate, and also for joining the team at Prepare Like a Pro. It's an honour to have you on, and for that, like I mentioned, you're in Paran. So for anyone that's St Kilda, Paran, Windsor, South Yarra, make sure to hit us up and get trained by James. You definitely won't regret it. And for those tuning in, make sure to listen to the whole episode. That will be live on our YouTube channel until we publish it on our podcast in the next couple of weeks. Our next live guest will be with Nick Murray. He's the head of sports science at Melbourne Footy Club, and that'll be this Thursday at 2 p.m. So I'll see you guys then. Thanks again, James. For anyone who wants to follow up any questions, where's the best place to get in contact?
Probably LinkedIn. If you look at my Instagram, there's nothing on it. That's where I lurk and learn new stuff from other people. LinkedIn's probably the best way to get in touch with me. Yeah.
Perfect. I'll add the link in the show notes. Thanks again, mate.